violence in Portland, and in particular, to learn about the many different efforts that the city currently has underway to address gun violence. As we all know, Portland saw an unprecedented rise in gun violence over the last few years. This violent trend played out in many cities across the country, of course, but because Portland previously enjoyed very low levels of gun violence, the rate of growth was significantly sharper than what we've seen in comparable cities around the country. This rise was also devastating our Black and brown communities at a highly disproportionate rate. In July of 2022, I declared a state of emergency regarding gun violence and launched several initiatives that we're going to hear about today. I am proud to say that the reductions in gun violence that we saw in 2023 tells us that we're on the right track, although we're not where we want to be yet. There's plenty of work yet to do. To walk us through that work, I'm pleased to welcome city leadership in these efforts, including the Ceasefire program, the Office of Violence Prevention, and the Portland Police Bureau. With that, I'll hand this over to my Community Safety Director, Stephanie Howard, to get us started. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Mayor, and good morning, Council. We're honored to be here today to report out on the good work that is happening by many of the folks that you'll hear from today, and many who you won't hear from today, who are out in the community, bringing life to the visions that were created in this by this council and this community. I'll run through just quickly to introduce who we have with us today. So obviously, my name is Stephanie Howard. I work for the Mayor's Community Safety Director. We also have Sierra Ellis, who is the Ceasefire Program Director. And I'll take a moment to acknowledge Sierra because she just a couple of weeks ago graduated in the first cohort of the Community Violence Intervention Leadership Academy at the University of Chicago, where her graduation ceremony was held at the White House and acknowledged by the Vice President and other leaders around the country. So we're really proud of her, and she worked really hard to do the work she's doing here on top of getting that additional certification and recognition.
Can we get a round of applause for Sierra? I think that's pretty cool. Good job.
Really impressive. We also have with us today Assistant Chief Chris Jovic from the Portland Police Bureau. We've got Marcel Frazier, who is the Director of the Office of Violence Prevention. And of course, we've got Director from the Community Safety Division, Mike Myers. Before we begin, I know it's important to all of us to take a moment to acknowledge that gun violence impacts people. It impacts people and their families and our community. And while we talk about the data that we use to inform important decisions, these numbers represent human beings who've lost their lives, who've experienced trauma, and monumental impacts to how their lives and their families' lives move forward. So we just want to make it clear that as we work through this, that's the lens through which we come to this work and how we focus ourselves on the work. Looking at our agenda, just quickly, we'll start with an introduction by myself and Director Myers to look back on how we got to where we are and some of the steps that were taken by this council and by the mayor that set into motion many of the other efforts that you'll hear about today. To talk about our intervention strategies, which is the Portland Ceasefire, we'll have Sierra provide an overview of that. We'll have Marcel also provide an overview of the prevention efforts that we employ through the Office of Violence Prevention. We will have Assistant Chief Jovic here to discuss how we are enforcing in regard to the laws around gun violence. And then we'll look at the results of those efforts and we'll talk about the next steps. And we've saved about an hour for questions and answers. We want to make sure that we are answering all of your questions. And of course, if there are any questions we can't answer, we'll work on it and get the information back to you. So with that, I think a natural place to begin our discussion is in July of 2022, when the mayor issued a declaration, an emergency declaration around gun violence. Leading up to that, as the mayor alluded to, we had seen a significant rise in our gun violence. And while that was a national trend, It was more sharply pronounced here because of the low rates of gun violence that we'd seen prior to that. Nonetheless, those impacts, as the mayor said, are devastating to our community. And so in July, when the mayor declared an emergency, we began a foundational effort that we called Safer Summer PDX. That effort was designed to allow us to approach gun violence in a different way and in a more agile way. We focused on street level outreach and credible messengers. We focused on funding small, local community based groups that could do that work. We focused on the ability to get rapid funding out the door in a way that we had never done before, would never been able to do before, but with the benefit of the emergency declaration, we were able to fast track that funding. And we also focused on place-based interventions, environmental changes in problem areas, and the many different ways that we could employ those strategies to change the environment and make it less hospitable to gun violence and crime in general. And as you'll hear in a moment, our results, well, let me back up. Our goal when we issued that plan was to reduce gun violence by 10%, gun homicide rates and total shooting incidents by 10% in 2 years. And as you'll hear, we more than doubled that in 1 year. So between 2022 and 2023, what we saw was a more than 20% decrease in both gun homicides and total shooting incidents. And with that, I will hand it over to Director Myers to talk through that data.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning, Mayor, Council. For the record, my name is Mike Myers. I'm the Community Safety Transition Director for the City of Portland. Team, you have likely seen this chart before during our many one-on-one check-ins over the past several months, as I've attempted to keep you informed of our progress. It is important to continue to point out the sharp increase in homicide, and specifically firearm-related homicide, that began to edge up in late 2019. From late 2019 through 2020, 2021, and into 2022, the City of Portland saw a greater than 200% growth curve in gun violence. Although the City of Portland was never the highest homicide rate in gun violence in the United States as compared to other cities our size, we did experience the most extreme growth in gun violence nationally. During that period, the Mayor and Council responded. The Focused Intervention Team was formed, and a Focused Intervention Team Community Oversight Group was established. You know them as the FITCOG. The Mayor, through Portland Police Bureau, established the Enhanced Community Safety Team to investigate shooting incidents. And Council, you repeatedly heeded the call for more outreach investments by strongly funding key Office of Violence Prevention programs. In the middle of 2022, the Mayor declared an emergency on gun violence. As with all emergency declarations, this declaration called for a comprehensive gun violence reduction strategy and required a multidisciplinary collaborative approach. We began that work in July of 2022 at the height of record-breaking gun violence. By the end of 2022, 6 months later, we had flattened the curve and stopped the growth. Into 2023, we began to see the results of the strategy, with gun violence reducing greater than 20% by the end of the year. Next slide. Most importantly, we witnessed the largest reduction in the most vulnerable demographic impacted by gun violence in Portland. The California Partnership Gun Violence Problem Analysis in 2019 identified the group most impacted by gun violence was young Black men ages 18 to 44 involved in group and gang-related activity. We tailored our outreach and prevention programming to reach these very men, and by the end of 2023, we had a greater than 28% decrease in firearm-related homicide among this group. Mayor and Council, I must pause at this moment to extend my heartfelt thank you for your investments in saving these lives. Thank you. Next slide. When we declare an emergency as a city, one of the key outcomes is the collaboration and relationships that are developed. There are so many organizations working together on gun violence reduction in Portland. Some are on the slide in front of you, but not all. There are dozens of community-based organizations we work with, dozens of community members working together on this, faith-based leaders, outreach workers, prevention specialists, law enforcement officers, firefighters, nurses, doctors, and hundreds of invested community members. To all of you, I offer my sincerest appreciation. This is a massive team effort, and we have only begun to see the positive result of our work. As the Mayor said, there is still a long way to go. Up next, you'll hear from Sierra Ellis, the Director of the Ceasefire program. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Myers, and good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning.
My name is Sierra Ellis, and I am the Ceasefire Program Director. I only have a few minutes with you, so I will try my best to keep this as brief and as high level as I can, and I'll take questions at the end. I am here to share the impactful work we're doing through the Ceasefire Strategy, which is a fairly new initiative adopted here in Portland as of June 2023. Ceasefire is a focused deterrent strategy that is used in dozens of cities nationally, including Indianapolis, Oakland, Boston, New York, Chicago, and many others. And as the director of the program, I attend shooting reviews and I work alongside numerous law enforcement partners, including federal, state, and local officials. I also work directly with community-based organizations in tandem with the Office of Violence Prevention. My work includes connecting with system partners, coordinating resources, and directly connecting with the most high-risk individuals in our community in an effort to address and stop gun violence. Our approach is simple. It's built on collaboration and partnerships, bringing together everyone who plays a key role in keeping our community safe, including community-based organizations, government agencies, and law enforcement partners. The shared goal of Ceasefire is to save lives because behind every shooting is a person who is forever impacted. And together we're working to ensure that those at the highest risk of becoming perpetrators or victims of gun violence understands the implications of their behavior. Today, you'll hear about the steps we take each week to work towards our goal of reducing violence within the Ceasefire strategy in Portland. And on the screen, you'll see how the strategy is implemented, beginning with the first bullet point, which is the gun violence problem analysis. The gun violence problem analysis is the initial step involved in a comprehensive gun violence reduction strategy. The problem analysis is a set of data collection designed to support the implementation of this strategy. It also establishes a common understanding of the local gun violence problem that guides and informs the work of civic, community, and criminal justice leaders to reduce violence. Additionally, the problem analysis identifies groups we're dealing with here in Portland and individuals within our community who are at the greatest risk of violence and helps tailor an intervention to reduce that risk. It also includes information on social networks at high risk of involvement in violence, including their size, relationships, turfs, and activities, as well as a spatial concentration of violence throughout our city. Research increasingly shows that concentration of violence within social networks is a key factor in addressing gun violence, and the risk of future gunshot victimization is highly influenced by the composition of individuals' social networks. So the more someone is connected to individuals who are victims or perpetrators of shootings, the higher their risk. Additionally, we know that the average time to a retaliatory shooting once someone is impacted is about 125 days. That is why getting ahead of these shootings is our top priority in reducing violence. So what drives the strategy forward? Well, it consists of multiple meetings and people who make this strategy holistic. And I'm going to cover several meetings and steps we take that take place weekly, including the shooting review, coordination meeting, and the strategy meeting. The shooting review is the second bullet point on that screen, and it is the engine and what drives the strategy forward. It involves law enforcement partners such as PPB, FBI, probation and parole, and surrounding jurisdictions. This meeting is primarily investigative in nature. People who attend this meeting must have criminal justice information clearance by the FBI, which is background to view the information within that meeting. Also, we review shooting incidents over the last 7 days, providing us with insights into group conflicts or areas considered hotspots. The effectiveness of the shooting review lies in taking people out of their silos and sharing information within the room. Also, within this meeting, solutions to identified problems are addressed and assigned as action items in the review if possible, or at follow-up meetings if more complicated. Most importantly, people who are identified in this meeting are likely to become victims or perpetrators of gun violence based upon their risk factors. And that leads me to the second meeting we hold on a weekly basis, which is the coordination meeting. This meeting is a more filtered version of the shooting review, and it has a broader audience. Within this meeting, those identified in the shooting review are referred to the Office of Violence Prevention, and here we focus on gaining a deeper understanding of individuals driving gun violence, especially those that meet the 5 out of 7 risk factors that I mentioned. And to give you more insight to what these risk factors are It's males between the age of 18 and 44, has 5 to 8 previous arrests, associated or has group involvement, has been previously shot, socially connected to a recent shooting or homicide victim, prior criminal justice system involvement, including felonies, prior probation, or post-prison supervision. And then from here, we devise a strategy on how to intervene, either through a custom notification or the referral process directly to the Office of Violence Prevention. So what is a custom notification? It is a direct, respectful message to an individual, informing them of their risk levels and helping them understand the consequences of their actions. During the custom notification, a member of law enforcement, a community member, myself, is in that custom to help them convey the concern of the recent shooting incident that has brought them to the shooting review. Ideally, customs would be provided for nearly every identified very high-risk individual. However, considering capacity, it has been recommended that we conduct at least 80 total custom notifications during the first year of implementation. And then after we provide a custom notification, we directly refer them to the intensive case management program, which is equipped to support them through their journey. And our partners who have intensive case management programs are Going Home 2, Nurture, and POIC. All have credible messengers, are able to engage and connect with the individual we refer. And Marcel will walk you through this in detail later on. The deterrence piece of the strategy is two-pronged: services and enforcement. If an individual refuses to change and refuses services that have been offered, and they continue to inflict harm and victimize our community, the last resort of the strategy is focused enforcement. At this point, we will use data and information needed to intervene with a group or individual causing harm to our community. And Assistant Chief Jovic will cover this detail later on. And I want to reiterate that it is our collective responsibility to help those in need, but also to hold those accountable for their actions. And as I wrap up, I want to emphasize that the work of Ceasefire and our partners is data-driven. It's based on best practices. It's compassionate yet focused, with our number one goal of being the preservation of life. And I will now pass it to Director Marcel Frazier. Oh. He's right next to me.
He's very quiet and stealthy, isn't he?
Hello all, my name
Thanks,
is Marcel Frazier. I'm Director for the Office of Violence Prevention. So the Office of Violence Prevention, we employ dozens of contracts, but today we'll be talking through street level outreach and intensive case management. So our street level outreach program is community engagement within data-driven hotspots. They will be attending after school activities, events, and other high profile events. The goal at a sustained level is reduce violence, decrease recidivism, and find stable housing, etc. So intensive case management, as Sierra mentioned earlier, is life coaching. This includes highest risk individuals placed on intensive case management caseload via a service provider, which is Going Home 2, POIC, and also Nurture. Life coaching includes job placement, attaining further education, mental health services, etc. Referrals usually come from the Portland Police Bureau plus Ceasefire via the weekly shooting review, as Sierra mentioned earlier. And the goal of this at a sustained level is reducing the likelihood of being a victim again or a perpetrator. Next slide, please. Excuse me. The Office of Violence Prevention also employs general gun violence reduction strategy grantees. This includes culturally-specific communities, the African community, the Latinx community, and other immigrant communities at large. At the turn of this fiscal year, we also incorporated a program called Safe Blocks, and that is data-driven hotspot management, hotspot mapping, determining where we engage, community engagement, public safety forums, canvassing, placemaking projects, etc. These folks are also experts in CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. The goal at a sustained level is to improve the perceptions of safety and decrease incidences of violence. Next slide, please. And here we talk about what does success look like for someone on our life coaching caseload, which is ICM. So have they secured and maintained employment? Have their risk factors changed? Have they reoffended with a gun-related incident? If battling with a substance abuse, have they received treatment? Have they successfully reached their short-term and long-term goals, which are brought up with life coaching individually? And then community engagement, have we overall changed the narrative around the strategy around CDI? and have we increased trust between law enforcement and community at large? On this, I'll pass it over to Assistant Chief Jovic to talk through the rest of the ceasefire strategy on the law enforcement side.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Chris Jovic. I'm the Assistant Chief of the Operations Branch of the Police Bureau. Until recently, I was assigned as the commander of the Specialized Resources Division, which houses the Police Bureau's gun violence units. Next slide, please. I want to start off with this slide just for a little context. This slide shows the year-over-year seizures by the Portland Police Bureau over the last 10 years. So 2014 to 2023. Gun seizures have increased 86% over that last 10 years. That's an incredible increase in seizures. I believe this metric does a good job showing the increased prevalence of firearms in our community, as well as the increased chance our officers have of encountering an armed person while doing their job. And while I'm going to give you an overview of the 2 units or the 3 units that are dedicated to reducing gun violence, this is a team game. We work with our bureau partners in the city, as well as the rest of the police bureau. It's not just the units that I'm going to detail today that have an impact on this problem. Every patrol officer has an impact positively on reducing this. Next slide. The first unit I'd like to talk about is ECST, or the Enhanced Community Safety Team. They're a plainclothes investigative unit made up of 7 detectives and 10 officers. They're responsible for the vast majority of non-homicidal shootings in the city. So their resources are split, again, into 2 different groups. One is the gun violence investigation team, consists of 3 detectives and 2 officers. Their typical cases look something similar to maybe investigating a drug deal gone bad, so an illegal drug deal where a firearm was pulled and discharged, or a road rage incident where a firearm is used, or any other felony level gun crime that doesn't meet the ceasefire criteria. Our ceasefire investigation team is 4 detectives and 8 officers, and this is the primary accountability mechanism for the ceasefire strategy. Our ceasefire investigators focus on the people causing the most harm to the community. These are repeat shooters, people that are engaged in tit-for-tat, retaliatory violence, and ultimately, this group is a relatively small group of people that is causing the vast majority of the harm to our community, and that's the focus of the ceasefire investigation team. Next slide, please. The second team I'd like to talk about is the FIT team, or the Focus Intervention Team. Now, this is a highly visible group of 12 officers and 2 sergeants, and they work very closely with their oversight group, the FITCOG. The FITCOG was involved in the entire officer selection process for this team. They work together drafting the job posting, drafting interview questions, and ultimately the final selection of officers and sergeants for this team. Team members are selected for their skills in communication, community engagement, as well as their investigation officer safety skills, because after all, we're sending these people out to deal with known shooting suspects. Next slide, please. Now, the FIT's mission is multifaceted. Their first mission is data-driven enforcement, and some of the data points we use are any information our crime analysts give us, specifically around crime trends, hotspot mapping, things of that nature. Sierra talked about the shooting review. Information is mined from the shooting review. That's a very, very important tool that FIT and ECST use to garner information. They also work very closely with the ECST detectives and share information that way. FIT and ECST all use these sources to narrow our enforcement efforts to be more efficient. We have a finite amount of resources. We want to make sure we're focusing on the people that are causing harm to our community. This will make the biggest impact by focusing on those that are causing the majority of the harm. Next slide, please. The other part of their mission is actively looking for opportunities to intervene in gun violence prior to it happening. And these are the referrals that Marcel talked about. FIT goes out and they might go to a shooting scene. They might recognize somebody that's been on multiple shooting scenes, but not directly involved in a shooting, right? You know, it's not coincidence that a person shows up multiple times on different shooting scenes. Those people can be referred through the ceasefire program to get outreach, to get the services that OVP can offer. FIT team actively looks for opportunities to build trust in the community. They attend dozens of community events a year. They've been so ingrained into the community at this point that they're actually asked for, the team is asked for by name citywide to come to their events because they have such an impact.
Wow.
Next slide, please. The final team that I'd like to talk about is the crisis response team. This is a group mixed of a sergeant and detached and full-time officers. CRT responds to the scene of violent incidents, many times homicides, and they're tasked with comforting family members that are dealing with that trauma. Many times they're making compassionate death notifications alongside our police chaplains. They help with funeral arrangements, including security plans if there's a worry of a retaliatory shooting during their time of grieving. They help family acquire funding through the state crime victims compensation plan, and they work as a liaison between the family and the Bureau during the investigative process. And if more resources are needed, they work with TIP Northwest to provide that extra resource. Next slide. So ultimately, I just want to discuss real quickly what success looks like for the enforcement side. There are a lot of measurables that we could show to show that we're out on the street impacting gun crime, including these numbers here. These numbers are a great indicator of our activity, but not necessarily the overall success in affecting gun crime. Ultimately, the metrics that matter are the ones that are showing gun violence in our city either increasing or decreasing. And those two metrics here I talked about earlier. Those are the total numbers of shootings and the number of homicides by gunfire. And as you know, and you'll hear again, both of those went down in 2023, which we're very happy about. We consider that progress, and we're hopeful that trend will continue, but clearly we're not claiming success, as you said earlier, Mayor. There's still too many people being harmed and killed in our community, and we need to see those numbers continue to trend in the right direction. Ultimately, this work is in its infancy, and it's just gaining traction. To see sustained success, we must not waver from our commitment to what is working. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Chief Jovic.
And by the way, it goes without saying, all of us here are hearing what you're saying. We're holding our comments till the end, but I don't want anybody to think we're not hearing what you're saying.
Understood. Thank you.
It's important what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. So what does success look like for the strategy overall? Well, starting March 1st, coming up, we will begin our monthly performance meetings, which will include you, Mayor, the Chief of Police, and Director Myers, and additional partners as needed. This meeting is to review the goals and the performance and the metrics of the strategy. It's not all about numbers, it's about accountability. Here we ensure that all of our partners are on the same page, holding each other accountable and responsible for our shared objectives. We review outcomes, indicators, and data, fostering transparent discussions around both our successes and the challenges we encounter along the way. Additionally, we conduct a comprehensive gun violence problem analysis every 2 years, so we're up for one. And like I mentioned earlier, this analysis is a holistic view of the issue. It's about staying relevant and being adaptable in our approach, and combining these methods with regular check-ins in our performance meetings is a deep dive into what we're trying to accomplish. We continuously refine our strategy to better combat gun violence and ensure that the safety of our community is at forefront. And together, these processes form the backbone of our strategy. The evaluation and the framework enables us to continuously adapt and enhance our efforts to reducing gun violence and creating a safer Portland for all. Thank you.
And thank you, Director Ellis. Mayor, Council, again, we want to share with you our current results of gun violence reduction strategy. Next slide. This chart represents 15 lives saved. It also represents 61 lives lost. It is a fact that we are reducing gun violence faster than our comparable cities across the United States. It is a fact that Portland ranks in the top 10 violence prevention programs nationally. The strategy is showing positive results. Clearly, there's more to do. Stephanie Howard will share with you more on how Portland ranks nationally. Next slide.
As Director Myers said, last year, Portland ranked number 10 in the top 50 cities in terms of its investment in violence prevention. And this is important because it's very difficult to measure and track data on triggers not pulled. That's an incredibly difficult thing to quantify. And so we're excited about this report that is published by the Community Justice Action Fund. That is a nonprofit organization that stemmed from team members at the Giffords Law Center on gun violence. And their goal is to use a public health approach lens and assess how the top 50 ranked cities, top 50 ranked in terms of their rates of gun violence, how those cities are investing in violence prevention efforts and data-driven strategies that are aimed to reduce violence. They call it the Violence Prevention Index, and they take that national look and focus on what's working, what are viable strategies, and how cities are following through. In 2022, which was the first year of publishing that report, Portland ranked number 10 on the list with a score of 39 out of 100. And for context, the average score for cities is 25. The year since then has shown a tremendous increase in our investments in violence prevention, thanks to this council. But we're expecting the 2023 report to be published any day, but our anticipated score has almost doubled to 77, which would put us in about the top 3. Now, if we could go back to that slide. What's really interesting here is you'll see where Portland ranks number 10 and Washington, D.C. ranks number 1. They had a score of 96. However, when you look at their rates, the change in homicide rates from 2022 to 2023, what you also see is that despite being ranked number 1, Washington, D.C. saw an increase of 33% in their gun homicide rates. And we asked our data team to look at that and tell us how can that happen? Is this a reliable index if that's what happens with the number 1 city? And what we learned after looking at that, and you should each have a report from the Community Safety Division data team that outlines this a little more detail. What we learned is that in Washington, D.C., while they had strong front-end investments, they failed to follow through in the investments that they made. They had tremendous turnover in the teams that were charged with implementing the investments, and then they lost cohesion. And so I think the big takeaway from there is you can spend all the money to do it, and unless you have the right team and the right strategy that works cohesively, it will not make a difference. Unlike the remaining cities on that list, you see that our change in homicide rate was significant, was the highest, tied with, looks like, Baltimore. And this is important to keep in mind, as I'll talk about in the next slide. So again, our anticipated score is nearly double what it was last year. And the takeaway, I think, is, again, that in order for these investments to be effective, they must be done with a strong team, with a clear vision, and with a cohesive approach. And they have to be supported by city leadership. So we thank you for the leadership that you've all shown to create the teams that we have today and to attain the results we're seeing so far. Next slide. Another interesting case on that list.
Stephanie, before you
Yeah.
move off of that, is this the report you're referring to?
Yes.
That we all have this in our
Yes.
packet? And if I could just read the key finding.
Please.
Triangulating data across multiple sources provides extensive preliminary evidence pointing to the efficacy of Portland's gun violence reduction strategy and investment in community violence intervention and programming. And the reason we did this report was that while gun violence was escalating, the question on the part of the media was, what are you doing wrong? As gun violence rates declined sharply, the question from the media was, isn't this just part of a national trend? And I guess if I were in the media, I'd ask exactly the same questions, and I'd probably frame them the same way, because it does raise a provocative question, which is what we're doing, does it matter? And what this report does is it uses statistics, data, and fact to demonstrate that, yes, in fact, while we are participating in a national trend, the efficacy of our specific programs is also demonstrated through this analysis. So it's kind of heady material, But it's important because it answers that basic question that we're getting asked, which is, does what we're doing matter? And the answer is yes, it absolutely does, and therefore the investments need to continue to be made in this area. Sorry for the digression, but I
Thank you,
thought
Mayor.
it was important to
It's very important.
underscore that.
And I'll add to that, you'll also see in that report that one interesting data point is when we began the Safer Summer effort and then evolved into our ceasefire efforts, the focus of outreach was that population that our problem analysis told us. It was those young Black men, 18 to 44, and with the risk factors that were identified through that analysis. And that's the population that we saw the greatest decrease in. And I think that's also very telling about how our efforts have been implemented, how we have followed through with the mission that was, the initial mission, and made sure that we stayed true to that mission. So unlike just a mere national trend, our data shows that what we are doing is having an impact beyond what the national trends show. And to further punctuate that point, we'll look at Oakland as a case study. Oakland is the ceasefire model. They began the ceasefire model that we're using right now. And what you saw on one of the previous slides was that they were, I think, tied for third in the initial violence prevention rankings, but only saw a modest reduction in their gun violence of, I think it was either 1 or 2%. And so, interestingly, there was an audit performed of that to say, why is that? And what we learned is, frankly, that they stopped investing in their ceasefire program. And their city leadership, it lost support in 2016, 2017, and that began an increase in their gun violence rates and, as those investments decreased. The other thing is that using that model and seeing the impacts of the failure in continuing to fund it and support it, they have a new mayor who is now committed to reviving that program. And so they're going to be gaining back a lot of ground. They're going to have to work to gain that back. Where we are at the very beginning of our ceasefire model, we began it in July last year. And so we are seeing strong results and want to continue that momentum.
If I may, sorry, I just can't help myself. I also want to acknowledge that Governor Newsom has taken a strong interest in the success of Oakland and has just assigned 120 state police officers to the city of Oakland to help with public safety generally, but including gun violence.
That's absolutely right, Mayor.
So it is a partnership.
It absolutely is. And I would also say that I think Oakland fell victim to a pattern that we've all probably seen in different manifestations, which is investment goes into a strategy, it shows results, and we think we're done. And we take our foot off the gas, and then it ramps back up. And so I think, if we talk about what's next, which is the next slide, I think what we learned from the Violence Prevention Index and the case studies about these other communities that are struggling with this, what we see again is that there is incredible importance in our leadership supporting these efforts, in continuing to maintain the momentum that we have gained, and not losing that ground so that we have to reinvent and regain it. And so I think, Mike, if I could turn it over to Director Myers to talk a little bit about how we're creating performance metrics and our next steps.
Sure. Thank you, Stephanie. I think you've heard probably through multiple presentations, and I meet with all of you one-on-one quite regularly, and we talked about the gun violence problem not being, in all of Portland. There are a number of individuals, the reference right around 100, maybe a little larger, of individuals that are actually driving the gun violence problem in Portland. So we're in great interest of meeting those individuals and talking to them. And that's kind of what the ceasefire program is all about focused deterrence. Director Ellis, can you talk to us a little bit about what those performance metrics might look like as we tackle what, is a relatively small number of individuals that are driving the gun violence problem in Portland?
Yeah. So the output goal for Ceasefire, the first goal is to engage with 189 very high-risk individuals. And last year, well, from June 1st, 2023 till today, we engaged with 141 individuals. So we are on track to meeting that metric. But, like Director Myers and Howard mentioned, that we need to have continuously invest in this strategy to make sure that we are able to do our job. The second output goal is to connect 132 out of that 189 to services. So that's a bit different. So engaging with folks would be, and including those custom notifications, and then providing 132 very high-risk individuals to services. And then the output goal 3 is connect 113 very high-risk individuals to life coaching or intensive case management. So that differs from services. Services could be anything around street-level outreach or job placement, but this is connecting 113 of those individuals to a 18-month program, which walks them through helping them make better choices to turn them away from being involved in gun violence.
Thank you, Director Ellis. And the final point on this slide is about ongoing evaluation and guidance. There's several ways to do evaluation of programs. One you're probably very familiar with. We use it quite often here in the city of Portland, or after action reports. That's a report that comes out after you've concluded the emergency. We elected to go a different path with the gun violence emergency. We are conducting what's called a developmental review. This is a review and an evaluation done as you are doing the emergency, conducting the emergency, and you get feedback to make changes as you go. As we hired a consultant firm called Social Impact, who in turn added on to the contract and hired OHSU's Gun Violence Prevention Research Center to help navigate through the developmental review. I know Avery from that, the research assistant, is in the audience today, and thank you, Avery, for your commitment. But Mayor and Council, these individuals, Avery specifically, is invited into every meeting we have. She does interviews, almost like we're conducting an audit as we go along, and receive feedbacks from her and the team from the research center, so we can make adjustments as we go. That concludes my remarks. Stephanie, if you want to close us out.
I'd be happy to. I'll just also flag that you have a report from Social Impact in the materials that you received as well that overviews what several of the strategies that we're using do and how they work. So there's additional information there for you as well. And with that, I think we've left an hour and 15 minutes for questions and answers. So we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
I first of all want to commend the team, the mayor, for leadership on this. This is real progress on a very deadly, serious issue. So I appreciate the work you've done. I'm going to get into parse through a couple pieces, but I just want to start with that and level set. Very proud of what you've delivered, and very, very appreciative of it. Taking a step back and kind of first principles, what is the team's current working hypothesis for the dramatic rise in gun violence starting in 2019? We certainly point to the pandemic, lockdowns, drug crisis, but what's the working hypothesis at this point, specific to Portland, as to why we saw such a significant increase?
Who wants to take that?
Yeah.
No, yeah, Mike, you've got the information on that.
Just one chair. Sorry. So thank you for the question, Commissioner Gonzalez. For the record, Mike Myers, Community Safety Division. And I would have told you 2 months ago that there isn't a working hypothesis, that as unconfirmed on the reasons why gun violence was reducing at the rate it was reducing in Portland, we didn't know the reasons that it increased. There were some clear social issues that occurred at the time of inflection in 2020, including COVID, which I recall where I was at in 2019. And in November or December, I can remember watching something on the news out of Wuhan, China. But we hadn't closed down in the United States until early 2020 in February. Now, if you look at the chart that I had talked about when I was speaking, the inflection in gun violence started in late 2019, prior to COVID lockdown, prior to any social unrest that happened during 2020, right? So it's been very difficult to find out why, for people to agree on why the increase in gun violence occurred in late 2020, 2019 and 2020. But it is clear, Commissioner Gonzalez, that it happened across the country. Every city our size experience an increase in gun violence at some form?
I'll add to that. I think if you look at our problem analyses, we had one done from 2015 to 2019, and then a follow-up from 2020 to 2022, I believe. And we can provide those there on the OVP website as well. What we saw was that we had a sort of resurgence of gang and group involved shootings. That was a growing demographic in Portland. As Sierra mentioned, the data shows that, social networks are absolutely a key metric in assessing someone's risk of perpetrating or being victimized in gun violence. And that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. Another factor that came to light in that research analysis, the problem analysis, was that Portland has a unique phenomenon within its homeless community. And in our homeless community here in Portland, what we have seen is an increase in the use of weapons like guns, whereas previously that was not as prevalent among homeless communities. And frankly, it's not as prevalent in homeless communities around the country. It's a fairly unique phenomenon here. Now, the Ceasefire model is not aimed at addressing gun violence in a homeless community. However, I think there are other efforts through our Street Services Coordination Center, through our task sites, the stabilization of that demographic, I think, is the key to reducing their vulnerability. Those incidents of gun violence, and this is anecdotal, but are typically related to conflicts, whether that's related to drugs or other types of just social conflicts, or frankly, just purely being vulnerable in dangerous situations. So in our view, while Ceasefire is focused in a different direction, our efforts around gaining stability and safety in our homeless population is the key to changing the dynamic of that gun violence in that demographic.
You've actually anticipated where I was going next with this. So thank you for the comprehensive answers. So the California Partnership for Safe Communities was very focused, or their basic hypothesis is that we have this clustering 18 to 44 gang-related or social or group-related, largely in the Black community. What are the demographics, though, that we're seeing of homicides occurring in the homeless community?
So that same report that you're referencing identifies the age group of being about 35 to 55-year-old white male, typically transient, oftentimes connected to some other type of crime, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, gun trafficking, retail crime. And I think, I don't want to speak for Assistant Chief Jovic. I've been talking to just the police chief the other day. We talked about, the impact of guns in general in Portland and nationally, just guns being everywhere. And he's been around a long time. And he said he used to never see guns in a homeless community. And you didn't see guns at the level and the amount in just car stops. I don't know, Chief, if you're prepared to mention that, but it sounds like today that's a different story. And we're seeing guns involved in our houses encampments, and it's ending up in homicide rate. We've had one just last night or the night before, or last night, I think 2 nights ago. And so there is a significant amount of gun violence of our homicides are in the houseless community, at 20% or greater. And it's arguable about where that is. It's hard to identify exactly if the individual is houseless or not. When you run a police report, there's no checkbox on the report to say, houseless. They typically have an address at some point. So, that's been kind of difficult to track exactly if they are or they aren't. How we came to the conclusions, or how California Partnership came to the conclusion, is they actually interviewed the investigators and one-on-one interviews, and came through the narrative to decide that this person was actually without a house and living on the street.
Can I add something to that? Just for reference, Ceasefire doesn't exclude people based on their housing status, their race, factors like that. So if a case fits into the Ceasefire model that's involving people that are houseless, that case is picked up and those services are offered and those investigative resources are used to solve that as well.
Very, very helpful. And I guess this sort of transitions to another, as we're, from policymakers' perspective, the things we have to wrestle with. So we have the upstream causes of violence. Certainly we've dealt with a lot of social upheaval, economic displacement, really tore asunder the social fabric in 2020, that's shaken our society in multiple ways. That is kind of a shared experience, a lot of ways. But when Stephanie, you were sort of speaking to some of the efforts the city's making in the homeless population to stabilize, to kind of deal with the upstream as best we can, it is, I guess I would just call out when we're thinking about a strategic plan for public safety, thinking about what our focused interventions are going to be in the houseless community, where they clearly have different characteristics, different challenges, even if impacted by similar upstream ultimate causes. We may need more particularized intervention in the houseless community.
I can appreciate that, Commissioner. And Director Frazier has been very open about discussing opportunities to do similar street-level outreach, intensive case management that we do with other vulnerable demographics with the houseless community. And I think that's one of the things that we'll be working on here in 2024.
And I guess this is just an editorial going back the other direction on what happened in our Black communities, 18 to 45. You know, there's elements of that the city doesn't control. The disruption of public education, access to sports and arts. We sometimes only have a tangential role. But as we think about economic development and shared economic prosperities, how do we address the upstream pieces as a community so that we're not entirely reliant on focused intervention when it comes downstream? And I think that's a collective piece that we all need to strive for. Can you just speak briefly to what focused deterrence means relative to historic responses to gun violence? So we go back to 80s. There's a shooting in North Portland. Black victim, presumed black perp. How did we respond in the 80s to that versus the focused deterrence model?
I can take that. Sure. So this is a much more coordinated response than we've seen in the past. We've dabbled in a ceasefire type model for the last, 8 years, but we've never been coordinated with OVP and community safety and all of our partners like we are now, including outside law enforcement agencies. I mean, everybody has a seat at the table now. We're sharing information. We're realizing that to have a great impact, everybody has to be sharing information. Investigative cases used to be held in very, very tight confidence by the investigator, right? And that really didn't serve the overall prevention of another crime from happening, right? Sharing that information, knowing who's out causing the harm to the community, lets us focus on those few people that are causing the most harm. So I would say the coordination effort is incredibly significant in causing this reduction.
Okay. And could you just speak briefly, I guess this is for Director Myers, the role of FitCog in all of this as in terms of community engagement and connection to this whole piece?
Sure. Well, I'll first give the opportunity for the mayor. This was your idea.
Well, I have a better idea. We have people from FitCog
We
sitting
do.
right behind you.
Mr.
Why
Hayes
don't
is
we ask
behind us.
them?
How about I invite him up?
I'm always happy to guess. Good morning, and if you wouldn't mind just saying your name for the record.
How y'all doing? My name is Terrence Hayes. I am the chair for the FitCog.
Did you want to restate?
Sure,
your question?
Terrence, thanks so much for being here. Maybe give high level FitCog's role, where it sits in the whole equation.
So I'll do my best from a community point to talk about what FitCog is supposed to do. So for me, I think our main responsibility is to work in relationship with the FIT team to ensure not only the decrease in gun violence in the community, but also that the FIT team doesn't cause those historical harms, right? Over policing, over aggressive. We want to decrease any form of harm that the FIT team could cause to over police communities or marginalized communities. So for us, what we do consistently is we look at the body of work, right? We want to talk about the engagements. We want to talk about the context. And then what we do is we analyze that work. We make sure that the FIT team itself is moving with data and not like this overreaching umbrella. And we're really proud if I could say this about the FIT team, really proud and excited that as a community-based organization, we're not finding things over and over to challenge them about. So now we're able to even take it to the next level and go from just like, hey, we're gonna watch you really, really close and make sure you don't do these things to cause harm. But because they've done well so far in that space, we're able to go and now we're creating models of community-based education, adult form education from a community point of view that we're working really close with PPB to get that moving forward. So we're turning into something very relational as far as oversight go. But I always say it is our responsibility to make sure that the FIT team is not causing those harms, that they're not going into the community pulling their muscles out, but instead leading with compassion and engaging community folks with love and humane. And we're really proud that so far they've done really well with that.
Fantastic. And maybe you could speak briefly to what's the training for the FIT team? Is there a specialized training?
It's actually being developed by the community.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so our vice chair, Dr. Gina Ronan, is actually working with not only community members, but FitCog members to develop a culturally sensitive program. And the PPP has those trainings, but what we wanted to do is we wanted to bring one that brought the community voice into the space. And so I'm really happy with the level of participation that we're getting from PPB and from FIT team leadership.
And if I could just add, I think what FitCog existed before the FIT team. FitCog chose the FIT team. And so, the development of the FIT team has been an incredibly collaborative process all along. And I do want to say, I don't think that the ceasefire model changes much of what the community set into motion and how the FIT interacts in community, how they conduct their work. I think it's just, again, kind of the umbrella or, sort of the connective tissue between these pieces that brings them together. So, yeah.
Got it. No, fantastic. I'm going to turn over to my colleagues here in 1 second. But any initial hypothesis in what we've seen in 2024? We've seen a little bit of an uptick. Do we have any perception of what we think's driving that right now?
Commissioner, no is the answer. This has been such a broad scope of investigations. There's been gang group related homicides. There's been transient related homicides, domestic violence related homicides. It's truly, these are all unique incidents. And at this point, I think it's too early to say that there's a pending trend coming.
Fair enough. And look, I don't want to take away from the good work done in 2023. I think there's a lot to be proud of here, particularly balancing the concerns against over-policing and still making progress on gun violence. I think that's threading a needle on some very difficult public policy issues, and applaud your work. So I'll turn over to my colleagues. Thank you.
Commissioner Rubio.
Hi, I'll just, a lot of my questions have just been answered through the commissioner's questions, but I'll just go a little deeper on a couple things. First, I just want to say congratulations. This has been a tremendous lift, and what a journey this has been since over the past several years when we were first talking with alarm about what we were seeing and feeling the impact and the urgency in the community. So I just wanted to give a lot of appreciation to you and your teams. And what I really in particular want to appreciate too is your ability to recalibrate as you tried something and then tried something new. And so that's really where my questions are coming from. And I really appreciate the context setting about this we started seeing some changes in 2019 preceding a lot of the things that people think to go to first as a causal reason. So what approaches, in your opinions, of what you see, knowing that Portland's slightly unique in what has been going on here in terms of the combination of the landscape and approaches, what have been the levers that have actually made the difference since 2019? And what programmatic approaches have shifted that you feel have been critical in making that difference? And what have you learned? What are lessons for us in that time that we should really be taking and keeping at the forefront, particularly as we're going into the next generation of our city government and new leaders are coming on board? what do you want to make sure is not lost? And that's connected to my second question was really more interest about talking about the distinctions in programs on that index that you referenced in that chart that we saw. But first, I'll focus on that first question.
Maybe Director Frazier will answer the second question. If you want to think about that, we'll answer the first one. I think that, and I'll share with my colleagues, I think, there are many different opportunities that we had since we all talked in 2020 about the gun violence problem that have made a positive impact. I think Director Howard talked about it through one slide, the importance of having a connected council that understood the issue, was bold. I can remember having conversations with you and others about the need for investment and how, what the impacts that would possibly make. And, there was discussions about investing in new and emerging groups, expanding the current set of community-based organizations that we had doing work. There was discussions about place-based work that we hadn't done before, and the whole idea of mayor around vibrant neighborhoods don't burn, and there's gun violence aren't in vibrant neighborhoods either, and how do we make a vibrant neighborhood while we're doing this? I think one of the biggest impacts, frankly, was the reestablishment of the focused intervention team, the ECST, and the solid investment to keep that going. I speak to the chief probably every day, and there's and when I ask him like, what else can we do? It's double down, and it's everywhere we're talking here. It's we have to keep going. There is an investment cliff facing multiple bureaus across the city. We're all aware of it. We have one in the Office of Violence Prevention too, and so it's continuing the funding. It's continuing the interest from the council. It's continuing to support the police bureau in their hiring and assuring that they have the resources that they need to continue the focused intervention team, specifically homicide-related investigations. I don't want to speak for you, Chief, but in staying connected with us as we go through a very traumatic issue for the city. We're facing a lot of emergencies right now. We're tackling houselessness together. We just declared a fentanyl emergency a few weeks ago, and gun violence one certainly hasn't been corrected. But I'll state that and then let my colleagues maybe comment as well.
I think one thing that I would say is that in terms of what works, it's all of us doing it together. Because if we approach things in an ad hoc, kind of way, and these pieces don't work collaboratively, that can't bring a holistic response. And I think what we've done over the last year and a half in particular has been to build a structure and a system around keeping this cohesion so that these all of the pieces that are necessary to this puzzle can collaborate to get to the result rather than being hamstrung by ideology or by a political view. It takes all of it together, and it needs to be enshrined in a way that it's not dependent on one-time funding, that it is stable, it is sustainable. That to me is what we have learned most clearly in the last year and a half.
Yeah, ultimately, we have had pieces in place throughout, and it goes back to the answer I gave you, Commissioner. Everybody has to be in place, but everybody has to be rowing the boat in the right direction, in the same direction, right? And once that happens, you can start making good progress, and that's what we're seeing.
And the second part of my question is, I'll just comment too. It's very evident that we're rowing in the same direction now, which is really heartening to see. In terms of the second question I have about the difference in programs from other states, so what are I would love to understand a little bit more, what do we have in common? What are key distinctions? Or is there a lot of alignment among those clustered at the top? Or are there material differences with other cities that are ranked higher or the same?
So one of the things I think was important starting off, this is no matter what emergency that we've been involved in, I think as a team, we do reach out to our other city partners and try to evaluate what they're doing. So we don't have to repeat, the processes. And yet I think we started off this meeting with Director Ellis's work that she's done at the University of Chicago and meeting all of her colleagues around the country. So there's been a vested interest in this group to try to discover what's working out there. One thing's very clear, Portland's unique. we have a different footprint on the homicide problem than other cities our size. It's just unique. And so and because of that, we had to be very innovative. We had to take interesting steps that probably may or not be done in any other city around the United States in order to address some of our issues. I think, Mayor, you mentioned the Street Services Coordination Center at one point, which was part of a declaration around the same time. And we move about 80 to 100 encampments a week. We send navigation teams out to our houseless community every day. They're out there today working. We built an entire temporary alternative shelter site with pod homes and built a community so that we can relocate individuals out of these situations and into a community where they can start to thrive. And we moved over 100 individuals from that task site in the last 90 to 120 days into housing. That's not happening in other cities across the United States. So I think there is much that is similar. Many cities have offices of violence prevention, not all of them. Many cities have focused intervention type teams, but they don't have focused intervention type teams with community oversight groups like we do. So there's just nuances and differences everywhere. I can tell you, and I think this is going to come out when that report comes out and we're ranked compared to other cities. I think we will be in the top 3, top 4, top 5. That you should be very proud of that. That we weren't there in 2021. We just started to see a difference in late 2022 and into 2023. And then what you're going to see is, I think, a good ranking going into 2024. That is, like I think Director Howard said it best, that is the collaboration of this entire team, including our county partners, our DA's office, our sheriff's office, our police bureau. I mean, it's across the board. And it takes everyone. So.
Great, thank you. Last question. I'm curious about the county as a partner, since there is so much alignment in terms of where the mission crosswalks with community services and a Department of Juvenile Justice, et cetera, over there. Can you talk a little bit about where you're working together and how well are we working together, and what do you see on the horizon?
Sure. Abby Stamp from the county is actually in the audience, and Abby and I work closely together on making sure that we align our services and the work that we do. Her team just finished a work product that shows on the website. It's actually posted on the Multnomah County website, and I'll make sure you get that link that shows and outlines the connections between the county and the city in our work to reduce gun violence. There are some very collaborative companion work that we do together, and we're very careful not to duplicate effort. And so that's part of the discussions that we have regularly. When the mayor declared an emergency around gun violence in 2022, we established an incident command team. We held meetings once a week as a planning section that you would normally have that in any kind of an emergency. And invited to the table were all of the parties you just said, all of the county parties, right there with us at the meeting, at the planning section meetings every week. Now, we just meet once a month because we've gained cadence, and that's the way it works. But I would assure you that there is a connection between county services and the city services. With that said, could it be better? 100% yes. I think that we are the county representatives that we work with closely, and our representatives have always agreed on almost everything we do together with the county, it can be better. And so we are constantly looking for those opportunities where we can kind of merge our work, incentivize each other to do things together, and create those successes together.
And if I could just add to that, I think Sierra's work and Marcel's work in developing Ceasefire and implementing that has absolutely been inclusive of the county. We have meetings with many different county entities. In particular, just last week, we had a meeting with DCJ and their youth unit there, and are working on how we can better coordinate there. And they're part of many of the meetings. There are county representatives in the shooting review. There are county representatives that we talk about with outreach when we're working to design a custom notification. We're working with county folks. So yes, to just underscore what Director Myers said, yes, we are absolutely working with them. And we've, I think universally, on both sides, recognize that, again, we're all trying to row the same boat. And so, we want our efforts to complement one another. And I think that relationship building is going really well.
Right. Well, it's great to know that that partnership is happening and it's working and also being reflective, and what a difference on the community side that makes. So I just want to commend everyone for your great work, and congratulations.
And I think one of the key relationships too, and Director Fraser, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you were at Gresham. They are a neighbor. We are closely attached there in the Northeast. Can you comment on like relationships with Gresham as we work on this work together?
Yeah, sure. So currently Representative Ruiz for State Rep for District 50, he's proposing a grant that would expand East outreach prevention efforts all the way to 82nd Avenue. What that would do is allow us to collaborate more on a weekly basis and use some of those funds to fund some of our groups doing good work in East Portland. But just to reiterate what folks on this call already said is every Wednesday and every Thursday we coordinate with the county. That's DCJ, that's adult probation, that's the jails, that's juvenile jails, et cetera. Information sharing happens on a daily basis. So these are phone calls, these are texts, these are email threads, and they're all bought into the ceasefire model. And us being the largest entity or the most coordinated entity, we're trying to bring along other entities like the city of Gresham, et cetera, as they expand their Office of Violence Prevention. So the coordination is there. I can't speak on how it was in 2019, but anybody we ask to come to the table, they're usually willing and able, and they bring information every time.
Great. Excellent. Thank you.
Let me just jump in there for 1 second. So is that on our legislative agenda to support that legislation? Does anybody know?
As of Friday, we have put out a press release saying we want to support that through our Office of Government Relations, but that is going through Rep. Ricky Ruiz's
Would you
office.
mind, Director Fraser, could you coordinate with government relations and just make sure that that is on our agenda? Because I don't, maybe somebody else remembers. I don't remember seeing that on our legislative agenda. I don't remember.
It's on there.
Is it?
Well,
Yes, somebody,
I'll just-
Sierra's saying yes? Okay, good, thank you. Commissioner Maps?
Thank you, Mike. This has been a great dialogue. I really appreciate the presentation, and even more deeply than that, I appreciate the work here. I think that a lot of us came into this job early in 2020, right as these really terrible trends were beginning to take off. I remember us as a council kind of coming together and saying, hey, let's set a goal in terms of bringing down homicides. And frankly, it took a little bit longer than we had, but we've actually bent the curve and are moving in the right direction. That's incredibly exciting for me as a policymaker and as a Portlander. And I'll tell you, my top priority moving forward is to make sure that we can continue this progress rolling forward into the future. We're doing great, but we are nowhere near to where we were just 4 or 5 years ago. And frankly, I think at least in terms of the lack of gun violence in Portland is, that's the old Portland I think all of us want to return to. My colleagues opened up many of the questions that I wanted to explore, but let me just ask a few to help sharpen my understanding of what's going on here. I think if we went back to, for example, Sierra Ellis's presentation, she talked about how we identify the universe of folks that we potentially are interested in. And yeah, it might be helpful if he came forward. Ms. Ellis, I think you said that we are tracking something like 7 risk factors, and if you test positive or come up positive for 5 of them, you're sort of in our universe of folks that we're watching. Do you have a sense of how many bodies is that? Is that 700 people? Is that 7,000 people? Or do we know what the universe?
How many people are referred from the ceasefire shooting review to?
I think more so than that, I recognize we have a bandwidth capacity. So everyone who tests, I'll just use that.
Who are identified as high risk?
High risk, yeah. How many would that be? And and my criteria, or at least my understanding is there's 7 risk factors. If you test positive for 5, that's the kind of community that we're looking into. Is that 500 people, 700 people, 7,000 people?
So last year, we referred around 141 people from the shooting review. So those are the people who are identified as high risk. There's at-risk folks. That's a broader community of people. And Ceasefire's goal is to really just focus on the very high-risk individuals who have the 5 out of 7 risk factors.
Okay. And so that's about 100 and some odd a year?
Yeah, it's around 200 people a year.
Okay, great.
give or take.
And what, can you just really quickly remind us of what those risk factors are again?
Yeah, so they're males,
Yep.
18 through 44,
Uh-huh.
5 to 8 previous arrest,
Okay.
associated with or has group involvement, has been previously shot, socially connected to a recent shooting or homicide victim. And this one is specific to Portland, prior criminal justice system involvement. That includes felonies, prior probation, or post-prison supervision.
Thank you. That's very helpful. One of the things that jumps out at me at that list, and it kind of harkens back to a conversation I think Commissioner Rubio was having, which is the county's involvement in this. You know, frankly, if you've been arrested before, or if you've been involved in the justice system before, I would assume that you're kind of engaged in the probation system, or you have been to some degree. We had some conversation around that, but I'll tell you, colleagues, when I listen to what we're doing and the client that we're serving, it also, I guess another way to put it, how is what we're doing different from what I think the average Portlander would expect sort of probation to be doing? It seems like it's a very different, or help me understand it, because
yes.
this is the kind of stuff that we're doing. It's great, government should be doing it. It kind of strikes me as being the kind of thing that I would hope the probation office is doing.
I think the distinction that is in these risk factors, just because you've had 5 to 8 previous arrests,
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you've been convicted and you're on post-prison or on supervision of some sort. So that's the distinction there. Is in terms of what they offer, I'll let them cover
Yeah.
that.
So there's a difference between a probation officer and a life coach. As probation officer, there's a little bit more teeth to the engagement, but they also are seen as a client. They see him more as law enforcement. So life coaching might have an end on taking you out to lunch, going to a game with you, engaging on a text message or a phone call, whereas the probation officer has more teeth of like, if you're not reporting, we have these supervisions, which means that you'll be back in our custody. So I think they work hand in hand when you look at a juvenile court counselor or a probation officer as well as a life coach. And again, they have different strengths. One's really law enforcement,
Yeah.
and one's community-based. So sometimes they coordinate a lot. They're just not in their opposite silos, and they'll approach the client on a two-pronged approach. So basically, life coach is right here, probation officer is right here. Obviously, you don't want to have to go back to jail and reoffend, but there is more teeth to being on paper with a government institution.
That's very helpful, and boy, I am glad to see that continuum of services. And I'll to the mayor and to the mayor's staff, you know, we're doing so much important work, which I think complements some of the work in rehabilitation we're trying to do in the justice system. I sure hope the state or the county and other folks who are invested in this work might be able to support financially some of the stuff we're doing. I don't know how the money flows in this space, but intuitively it makes a lot of sense to me. But we can have that discussion at a deeper level as we get more into the budget. Let me ask another question, and this one kind of harkens back to, I think, some of the issues that Commissioner Gonzalez brought up around who is getting shot and who's doing the shooting and the broad trends here. And I recognize we don't have a full theory of what's happening in this space, but some of the trends are certainly interesting to me and kind of, I think, counter to the conventional wisdom. So when I look at the data that we get lots of data, including some that was presented to here today, some that wasn't presented here today. You know, I think white Portlanders account for about 40% of homicides in the city, and African Americans account for about another 40 roughly. That's the black side is kind of problematic because African Americans are only about 6% of the city, but 40% of the homicides. So you know something really counterintuitive is happening in this space. And here we've kind of have talked a little bit about gang violence and whatnot and the role that plays in homicides. But I think of gang violence as largely being a youth movement to some degree. I think if you officially look at gang statistics, they kind of say as a bucket. Once you get over 24, you're kind of age out of your gang stuff. But if you take a look at homicides here in Portland, I think about 17% of those folks are 24 and below, and really, I think 70% of the people who get shot in this town are 24 to like 45 or something, which kind of suggests to me that this is not the kind of the classic game scenario that we're talking about. For whoever deals directly with these communities and this hands-on with this work, can you give me a sense of what you think is who's getting shot and why? And I could believe there are different buckets involved here or different groups. Does anyone have any insights?
Yeah, I will speak to that. I think that when we look at the population of Portland, like you mentioned, the Black population is around 6%. Folks who are driving the violence within that population are a little bit older in terms of, the homicides we're seeing. A lot of it is social media, interpersonal conflicts that drive gun violence, and especially with youth. The youth are more reactive, I would say. So, you could have someone being on Facebook Live and streaming and then taunting someone to pull up, and which they will. And then so that is like that's a very interesting point versus the older generation where it's more, I don't know how to describe it. It's less reactive, I would say. So I think right now we're in this point where we're looking at the youth and we're looking at older folks who are driving violence and seeing what the risk factors are for youth versus what the risk factors are for adults. And so, as I mentioned, that we, every 2 years, we do a problem analysis. And so we're up for one. So I'm interested to see what that looks like in the coming months. And then, we're going to be working with OHSU and our other partners to really understand the implications and the health issues around those individuals when they are children, and then what we can do to help prevent them from becoming future shooters. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I'll tell you, as you do your problem analysis, at least 3 variables I hope you look at are both youth, because that population is incredibly important. I'm the dad of 2 teenage Black boys, so this whole space scares me to death, keeps me up late at night. I also don't have a clear understanding of the role that drug trafficking has in our town, and I hope that we can clearly define that. And then, as has been mentioned several times today, having a better understanding of the impact that gun violence has on our houseless community are some of the questions that I think all of us at this side of the table deal with every day, and any research that you can do to help us be smarter in that space would be great. I think I have one more question, and I think I need Mike at the table to answer it. And thank you for those responses, by the way. Hi, Mike. Great job. We've been having this conversation with your team for a couple of years now. Your team has performed just really amazingly. I think we as a council have in general have broadly embraced the goal of having measurable targets that we're trying to hit, and then actually achieving them. I think this council came to you and said, let's try to reduce gun violence by 15% or whatever it was a couple of years ago. You guys are now delivering reductions in gun violence, at least for the past year, of 10%. Can you tell me what this council needs to do in order to continue that progress for another year? And frankly, what I'd like to do is reduce gun violence by 10% a year for the next 5 years. What do the people who sit in these chairs need to do in order to achieve that?
Yeah, I figured you might ask that question maybe in a different way. I appreciate you asking it. I am very aware of the demands that you have on yours as council members, and as managers of these bureaus, and the financial responsibility, Mayor, you have to balance a budget. It does take investments in these programs to continue them. Director Frazier and I have had a lot of discussion about how I managed and Director Ellis, who was the interim director of Office of Violence Prevention, managed the budgets prior to Director Frazier getting here. And we tried a lot of things while I was here, and we did a lot of expansive work. At one point, it was really about the amount of small community-based organizations we could get out there and get working. I mean, there was a lot of innovative stuff that we did. I feel like we're 2.5 to 3 years into this now. And Director Frazier brings a level of leadership to this program that I think is needed right now at this point. And we've looked at the contracts that were motivated the past 2 years and what needs to happen in the future. So I'll break it down like this. I think there are 3 areas of investment we need to consider. And I'm not going to speak for Chief Day. I think Stephanie, Chief Day, and you are working together on what it's going to take for him to continue to do the details. And when I say details, it's the entertainment district detail, the fit, auto theft detail, the things that he needs to do in whatever, crime plan that he has. Stephanie and the chief are working on that. There'll be, I'm sure, a fiscal need to continue to do that work. Oftentimes it's done, with patrol, but also some overtime. Sierra Ellis's program, Director Ellis's program with Ceasefire, I believe is the thing in 2024 that will make the biggest difference. I think if we can pull off these custom notifications at the magnitude she's talking about, we can be very successful. It is a small number in comparison, all Portlanders that's doing the shooting, that's involved in this kind of these kind of tragedies. But she's right now a force of 2. It's going to take some investment there so she can do this work. So I think us coming back to you with what that investment would take, and that would be Director Ellis putting that together on what she thinks she can do as a performance metrics there, but what she personally can do as one human being. And then you met Terrence Hayes today. And then I don't want to speak for you, Marcel. I mean, you and I have talked a lot about how many contracts we have out there and what is needed going on. We know that we have general fund money through the end of July, and ARPA, American Rescue Plan money, through the end of 2024. That leaves that gap between January 2025 to July of 2025, and then of course the gap from the general fund that would hopefully carry over. And we had landed on about a $3.2 million ask. Now we would have to write that out for you so you understood it, were able to meet with us and talk about what it means. Marcel, do you have any thoughts right now? Do you want to share on what the financials would look like for OVP?
Yeah, there will be a $3.2 million ask on top of our regular general fund acts, and that is to replace some of those outgoing ARPA funds. If we allocate those ARPA funds by the end of this year, we'll be able to spend those down through 2026. But again, just to supplement our budget, we went from about $2.5 million to, we pushed out about $12 million. And so we expanded our services greatly. Reducing this budget is going to do a lot of direct harm to community members because, like we mentioned, there's life coaches that are checking in on clients on a daily basis. So imagine if that program goes away, that high-risk person is going to potentially lose a safe adult in their life, right? The daily check-in. So again, that'll be a $3.2 million ask on top of our general fund to match all the money we got from declaration and from ARPA.
Thank you. Mike, just so I'm clear. So if my goal is to reduce gun violence by 10% in the next calendar year, that's going to cost, on top of your baseline allocations, an additional 3.2, you think? And obviously we have to look at the details, but that's the scale and scope of what we're looking at?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful. I very much look forward to seeing a fleshed out recommendation from Ceasefire and the Office of Violence Prevention. And here, I'll just pivot to my colleagues on council and just say, preventing homicides and gun violence has to be one of our top priorities. I recognize it's a tough fiscal year for us, but at least for me, this is one of my top goals for what I hope we can accomplish while we're still here.
Good. Well, I guess that leaves it to me to close it out. And first of all, I have a couple of comments. There were really 2 audiences for today's work session. Number one, I wanted to make sure that the city council had clarity on the variety of programs and approaches that range from intervention and prevention to after the fact follow-up. We even had the enhanced community safety team in their investigative capacity mentioned today. The second audience was the community, particularly people who have been directly or indirectly impacted by gun violence. I want them to see that we're committed, that we are working together. Well, that we're collaborating, we're working together. Last but not least, and I apologize, I'm taking a new medication. It's a little more powerful than perhaps I thought. Chief Jovic, I really appreciate the work that your team is doing. I wanted people to hear that too. CRT, I think people sort of have an impression of what they think the police do and who they are and how they operate. I want people to really understand that there are many good public servants who go way beyond the call of duty. And CRT is just one more example. We could talk about many where people do very, very hard and personally traumatizing work because they care deeply about the community. And oftentimes, and I know the public doesn't understand this always, that the people who have the relationships with the people who are the most vulnerable in our community are often the people you least expect, and they're often police officers. And they're often the ones who are encouraging and offering support, not only to people who are directly engaged in gun violence, but impacted personally and permanently by gun violence. And your team deserves to be lifted and elevated. And Director Ellis is like, wow, what you've been able to do in just a very short period of time. And Director Frazier, we're very grateful for your approach. I always appreciate your directness, your seriousness around this issue, and your fact-based approach. We talk a lot about data, about facts, about budgets, and that is a necessary element of sitting on this side of the table. As Commissioner Mapps just pointed out, we have choices that we have to make. But there are few things that we do here as a city council that have such a profound impact on the actual lives, the day-to-day lives of people in this community in such a profoundly personal way. And so I want to appreciate that. Mike, as always, you bring a great collaborative and thoughtful approach to the work that we do here. This is why all of us are in this room, all of us. And I know there's a lot of people in this room who didn't speak today, who are deeply engaged in this issue and determined that we do better. And so I hope this work session just serves as a good example of the positive work that we are doing as a community, working together in collaboration, the public sector, the private sector, individuals, families, people who care deeply about this issue. And we're making progress. As I said up front, we're not there yet. We're not where we want to be. And nobody here is pretending that we are. But on the other hand, we have the right relationships, we have the right programming, we have the right partnerships. And one of these three individuals to my right or my left will be in this chair this time next year. And what I want the community to know is each and every one of them have said this is an important priority for them. So that bodes well for the future. And I really appreciate my colleagues on this point. So thank you. Sorry for blubbering through that. I'm not prone to that, but we're adjourned.